You've got to get used to the world of rejection, which you haven't had for the last 20 years of your career. You've just got to be resilient and just keep on going.
Today's guest, Tom Toumazis, spent 8 years as EVP and Managing Director of Disney-ABC-ESPN in EMEA, was Chief Commercial Officer of Endemol, CEO of European newspaper group Mecom plc, and held senior commercial roles at ITV, EMAP, Eurosport and Yahoo.
I would encourage people to stay in their lanes and figure out precisely what your superpower is. What are you really bringing to a table? Because if it's just cash, the cash will run out. And if it isn't anything else and you don't really understand the business, there'll come a time when you'll either fall out of love with the business or they'll fall out of love with you.
He is now documenting the reality of going plural through a LinkedIn content series. Today, we're going to do the version of that conversation that the series cannot be.
Some people very early on in their plural world say, yeah, I might be open to another full-time job. If not, I'll do some plural. And I think that confuses your message. You're either going for it or you're not going for it.
Welcome to Enter the Boardroom, the podcast for boards and board members. I'm your host, Oliver Cummings, CEO of Neural, home to the Enter the Boardroom community, the destination for serving and aspiring board directors. Tom, welcome to Enter the Boardroom.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Tom, let's talk about your decision to go plural, because you've been doing this now for over a decade. But I want you to take me back to that moment where you decided to stop pursuing executive roles and build a portfolio instead. Was that a proactive decision or did it happen to you?
I think it was a bit of both. I mean, I'd been a corporate gladiator, as I call it, for so many years, and I'd never built anything from the ground up. I had been a successful advertising sales executive for many years and then moved into general management and leadership. But I mean, commercial and sales were at the heart of what I had done for my entire career. And I think on the one side, I was asking myself after I'd left Yahoo is what I'm going to do next. And I was fortunate enough that my wife and I had the fuel to be able to make the decisions of change. But I was really curious about building and starting and seeing whether I could start something or play in a different environment. I think also I became increasingly curious about more than just one thing. And I think if you're in a corporate world, your seasons are very much defined for you. You know, you've got normally a planning season, a buying season, a reflection, a review season. And I wanted to do something slightly different. So I think it was a bit of, this is my time. I didn't think that there were more big corporate jobs that were going to appeal to me and that were going to come my way. And so I wanted to put a bit more control back into my life and find a way of exploring something slightly different. But you don't know. You don't know whether you're going to be able to do it, and you don't know whether you're going to be any good at it. And so I started with a strategy of investing some of my own money and sitting around what I describe as small tables, startups. And I built a kind of approach, which was, let's look at startups at a very early stage. In some instances, just a piece of paper with a few entrepreneurs that had an idea and a vision, put some money behind the business, take on the chair role, use my Rolodex, and try and grow my experience as a chair from there and see where it took me. And that's the beginning of the journey. And for about 4 years, Ollie, it was small tables until I would say PRS came along in 2018 and the NSPCC, another big table, non-for-profit. But you exercise so many of those similar muscles. And then gradually, small tables became part of my world, large tables became part of my world, and then the advisory world became another part of my portfolio world.
Super interesting. I mean, we're now the largest player in the board search space. We do over 1,000 board placements, non-executive placements a year, and yet we're still less than 1% of the UK market. Though we also do stuff globally as well. And so what I will always say to people when they ask me, how do I go about getting board roles, is you've got to go build your network. That's key. And there's one of the reasons why in the Enter the Boardroom community, we give people a lot of support with that. And one of the things I've always told people is go talk to 20 CEOs, offer your services as an advisor, as a consultant for free, even if you need to, because you'll start building the relationships. What I've never talked on Enter the Boardroom about previously is investing as the way into those roles.
Yeah.
How does that change the dynamic of the board role when you are investing and then going on to the board? Is it a different experience?
I mean, I think I would characterize it as, don't bet the house on anything. Bet what you can lose. The government have been, and the financial incentives of EIS and SEIS, enterprise incentive schemes, and seed enterprise incentive schemes have been pretty good, actually. And they were a good way of taking bets. I think they are, I would only do them. I only did and invested in businesses that I understood, that I could use my Rolodex, and felt that I could contribute commercially and help build from the bottom up. Now, if you only do one, Ollie, that's not the strategy. You've got to do a few because they don't all work. So it's got to be a balanced portfolio of investments and bets. But if you can take an investment position of 5 to 10%, it's got to be meaningful enough for you to want to lean in, spend the time. And if you can do a few of them, then the chances are you reduce your risk and you broaden your upside and you give yourself a chance. But I didn't want to be in that world of just applying for things and not taking a little bit more charge. So I thought that was the best start for me, was to look out for businesses that appealed to me in the spaces that I understood as a way of building my experiences around a table. And you can still exercise a number of the muscles that you need around a big or a small table. Actually, small tables, you learn so much about resourcefulness. And so I think you kind of almost build to it. And so it seemed the right approach to me. I mean, it worked, but it was a tactic, not really a strategy, because you never really know until you do it. But over the 3 to 4 year period, it was a great experience for me. And I hope for the businesses that I got involved in.
What did you get wrong about what it would feel like moving into that portfolio role for the first time? For someone listening who's thinking, gosh, Tom, that sounds like a really interesting tactic strategy of actually investing in a portfolio to build up my board experience. What did you not anticipate?
Well, I got to tell you that if you're working for small businesses, resources are extremely, extremely limited. You tend to focus on money in and investment in. You can spend a lot of your time running around trying to get money in. Some of them don't work, and founders come and go, and you can be far too early. I mean, I can recall one business where we were far too early, brilliant technology, but I suspect we were too early for the market. So you have to be thick-skinned, lean in, be patient. And when everyone tells you it's going to take 3 to 5, it's going to take 5 to 10. You've just got to keep on going. And the other thing, Ollie, of course, is that you either get paid on the back end in the exit, or you get paid a very low chair roll. So the economics it's all in the investment. It's in the investment in the front end, and it's the reward at the back end. So you're going to have to be very patient and really lean into the business. And so you spend quite a lot of time.
You remind me of two of my sort of earliest investment lessons from my investor days. One was reading this Kaufman Institute report, which was entitled "We Have Found the Enemy and It Is Us." And they looked at their investment track record of investing in all the top sort of early stage investors through the cycle. I think they've been going sort of for multiple decades, and they figured out that their net return after fees was 2%, and they would be better off holding Nestle alone for the dividend, never mind the capital appreciation. And so that's one I've always been very wary, but I think your strategy of investing in sectors that you really understand in is critical, both from an investment perspective, but also your ability to add value as a board member.
Yeah. I've been approached to do things, and if I don't understand it, fractional crypto, the fractional crypto art world, and so many people were excited about it probably 9 years ago. And listen, it's just, if I can't get my head around stuff, there is no point in me sitting around a table. So one of the things that I advise people to do, and this may not be the right thing for everyone, is I would encourage people to stay in their lanes and figure out precisely what your superpower is. What are you really bringing to a table? Because if it's just cash, the cash will run out. And if it isn't anything else and you don't really understand the business, there'll come a time when you'll either fall out of love with the business or they'll fall out of love with you. So I think you've got to be very clear about what you bring. And it can't just be the capital. It's got to be the Rolodex or the network that you bring, the influences that you can bring to bear. And I think also just understanding the landscape so that you can encourage, protect, and guide the business to a place that you think might be more beneficial if they're going in the wrong direction.
Was there a point where you thought, what have I done?
It is a change of pace and lifestyle, and it's a change of the way you're seen. I used to become extremely frustrated when people used to say to me, okay, so you've retired. No, I haven't retired. And you kind of fill in a form and they say, what's your occupation? And we still are struggling with, a portfolio, or I've gone plural rather than singular. I think if you're at a dinner party and say, what do you do? I work for Disney. I work for ITV. It's so easy. And then you start to describe what you're doing now, and you get to, well, I do a number of things, 5 things, 6 things, 7 things. But when you're doing 1 or 2 things, you're right at the beginning of the journey, it's much harder. So, of course, there's going to be times when you ask yourself, what I'm putting all this energy in, I'm putting all this effort in. How is it coming across? Is it working for me? How do I feel? Do I feel good? But I got to tell you that I really love it now. But I didn't love every single second of it, or every minute of it, or every month of it. But I learned so much over my period of going plural. And I'm really looking forward to the next 10 years or however long I can continue to add value either to for-profits and non-for-profits.
Talk me through how you actually got that very first role.
The first one was with Solly at the Lad Bible. And I met Solly at the Lad Bible while I was at Yahoo. We got on really well. And he was looking for someone with some broader media experience. And what a business that was, and the vision that he had and what he saw. And that was a good first base of helping connect the Lad Bible and the leadership team to the broader, bigger media industry, because I'd spent quite some time at Endemol and at Disney in film and television production, and the company was thinking about how they would do that. At the same time, I met a number of people in very early stage businesses, and TV Beat was one of them, which was all about return path and measuring audiences. Fusebox Games was about narrative fiction in gaming. And both of those businesses I had a connection with and felt I could help them get to where they wanted to get to. So they were the very early stage conversations. Some were EIS, some were SCIS, but all required capital as well as connections.
It sounds like it was through your executive network that you were sort of crossing paths with these individuals, and then you were building good relationships with the founder, CEO, and building trust and an understanding for yourself and for them that you could add value through your Rolodex.
Yeah, and I also think, Ollie, you become a better board member by doing it. I think that I've learned a lot about the way and my style of being a board member. I think I've got better at it. I'd like to think I've got better at it. I suspect I was probably one of those backseat drivers in my early phase. Because I've been in command and control for so many years, it sometimes is hard to let go and to let others run it the way they want to run it. I think also if in the early stages of being a board member, you kind of practice that characteristic of, well, here's what I think, and this is what we should be doing. I think the more calm you are, the more experienced you become. It's not just about you having that opinion, it's about taking other people along with you on the journey. So sitting around some of those tables probably felt more like an executive moving towards a non-executive role. And now it's much clearly a non-executive role supporting the executive. And I think you just pick that up over time.
There's someone listening thinking, okay, this sounds like a really interesting path, but how much of this was down? Tom clearly had the capital to be able to invest, and he clearly had the credentials, whether it was Disney, Endemol. Was it, how important were those credentials for someone who doesn't have those credentials, but perhaps does feel like they have skills as a board director to add? Is that enough, or do they really need to go away and build those credentials, that experience?
I think one of the questions you've always got to ask yourself is, what are you bringing to the table? What's your the singularity of what you bring, and I always bring it back to, the things that I can help bring to a table is customers, sales, and commercial. And I think both of those, I sit very comfortably with me, and probably people and culture. But I think the commercial background that I had and continue to have has really helped me in my career and helped me understand the contribution I can make around the table. And I think you can sometimes think that you are a generalist, and you should really focus on what is it you're specifically bringing, and reflect back on your career and go, well, what are the things I've done that I've been successful? What are the things I enjoy doing? And coalescing around a particular skill and an approach that you think can be really helpful to a board. You don't need to have the stellar careers. I don't think I had a stellar career. I had a number of really good experiences. I enjoyed what I was doing. So I don't think you should just look at your CV and go, well, that's not good enough. I also think that you should think, and I would encourage, because this is one of the things that I did, is get involved in fundraising and charity work, because some of those muscles that you exercise around a board are absolutely precisely the same muscles that you'd exercise around a fundraising board or a non-for-profit or a school or a college. And I think we can sometimes say, well, we're going to do that when we have the time to do it. But actually, as you have your corporate career, think about stepping into a non-for-profit and showing a board, these are some of the things that I've done. And I've experienced some of the characteristics that a board would experience around a non-for-profit and a charity board. So I think, don't wait until your corporate career is finished, but think about how you can begin to exercise some of those muscles as part of it.
There are so many organizations looking for people who can fundraise, particularly in the non-profit space. I mean, you raised helped raise 35 million. For someone who suddenly thinks to themselves, gosh, Tom, that's an interesting idea. I could build myself a niche as someone who can raise funds as my first step on the ladder. Any tips for them on how they might want to think about going about that? Did you have a formula, heuristic that has worked for you so well for you?
I stumbled into it, Ollie. I had no idea I wanted to do it. I was, I think, around 40, just over 40. And I think, that overall cultural piece of me, we, them, I kind of did well enough to look after me and my family. And I thought, well, what else am I going to do? What else am I going to do with my life? What kind of contribution can I make as a corporate citizen, as a civil citizen? And I stumbled into Childline. Was not a strategy, but I absolutely fell in love with the place. And when I look at the non-for-profit work I do, be it Childline and the NSPCC for over 20 years, Speakers for Schools, or the University of Westminster. It centers around children and young people and actually helping children and young people be the best they can be. My tip is get going, and so many charities need people to get involved. But doesn't have to be a big one and doesn't have to be a national one. Just think of the local causes that you can get involved in. My rule of thumb is if you know someone well enough, I always used to say this to people, if you know someone well enough to ask them for your bus fare home, you know them well enough to ask them to get involved. And I learned so much about chairing by setting up a fundraising board with chief execs of media companies and trying to, get everybody aligned. And every year we keep on delivering, £1.5 million a year. That's a pretty big chunk of money from 12 people, 14 people who you bring together around a table, C-suite executives who turn up. So you're exercising a lot of those board muscles. You don't even know it. Now, you don't have the corporate governance that some other organizations might have, but you're still exercising a lot of those muscles that you would exercise around a table. So yeah, absolutely get involved. Lots of charities are looking for it. People can direct mail me, DM me on LinkedIn if they're interested in getting involved with Childline and the NSPCC, and we'll find something for you to do.
Boards don't just want experience, they want readiness. They worry that first-time NEDs will drift into operations, overstep governance boundaries, or fail to read the room, and they'll pass on a brilliant executive rather than take that risk. Proving you're different before you've held a board role is one of the hardest things a first-time candidate has to do. The Enter the Boardroom community helps you develop the language, the judgment, and the temperament boards are actually looking for. Visit etb.newrole.com to find out more. So I want to go back to this portfolio journey because we've gone through that first phase where you've got your first roles through investing in these businesses, sharpened your teeth around what does being a good board member look like, and then you start to get involved with some of these bigger organization boards. And I guess one of the things you would have crossed as part of that are NED interviews, which are a format most people have never encountered before. They need to do one. Really interested to hear what you've learned about performing well in those that you didn't know at the start of your journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game, Ollie. I think you've got to have such a thick skin to go through the NED journey. We're actually recruiting for a couple of NEDs at the PRS, and just the volume of applications that you get. There's a lot of fantastic people out there who are looking for non-executive roles. So you've got to be resilient. You've got to get used to the world of rejection, which you haven't had for the last 20 years of your career. And you're going back to the first phase of your career. So it's a numbers game. You've got to be clear about what it is that you're not getting right. You need to be, I think, very clear with the recruitment company about what the feedback is and the quality of feedback. And sometimes the quality of feedback is just not good enough. Because if you're going to learn why you're not getting something, you need to ask the right questions and expect companies to give you quality feedback about what's not working. But I think you've got to be very clear about who you are and what you bring. And you've got to be very clear about brand Toumazis and what is it that I am and what are the kind of contributions that I can make around the table and what I can't make around the table. And so be patient. Assume you're going to get no quite a few times. Don't be offended. I mean, I've tried to apply for a number of, if you like, public sector, almost volunteering gigs because I'm really curious about it and I want to help and I think I could add something, and I haven't managed to get over the line. And if you only do it once, Ollie, and you stop, you're never going to get there. So you've just got to be resilient and just keep on going.
That rejection classification resonates a lot. What I say to people typically is, one of three things has happened if you haven't got a role. Either you were completely deluded and you shouldn't have been going for that role in the first place, or you fell short in a couple of areas and you need to go and build up some experience that will make you stand out more, or you've been unlucky and you've shown up and on the day, there was someone just outstanding, or maybe not even that, as it was a 50-50 coin toss. And what's really important is working out which of those three categories you fall into. Because if it's one or two, there's stuff you can do about it. If it's three, then it's the numbers game. You just got to keep applying, and understanding that, I think, gives you a really good course of action to take away from that rejection.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And it may not I think the other question that you're going to ask yourself is, well, what do I get out of all these rejections? You still learn something. You still learn something, and it could be that you build a thicker skin again. It could be that you kind of the third time around you relax a bit more, and you're a bit more yourself, and you begin to realize that it could be just your profile and your style doesn't fit that moment of time for that organization. Because what you don't know is how they're trying to fit everybody else, all the other non-execs and the style of the non-execs. You could be the best candidate in the style that, and in, if you like, the capabilities that you have, but the board just decide to go for someone else that is delivering something slightly different.
Tell me about the interview itself, because you talked about it's a numbers game, doing more of those, but have you learned anything about performing well in those interviews that you didn't know when you started the journey?
I think I don't like Teams, and I much prefer the face-to-face. Don't you? I much prefer being in a room and kind of feeling it and getting a sense of it. I think you can almost over-prepare. And there's sometimes I've been criticized for that, or that's been part of my feedback. I think you can kind of just get too immersed in the detail and not bring it back up to a more broader level. So be careful. I think I would advise people to be careful about that. But I think try and show who you are a little bit away from the table as well. People want people by people. It's that old adage, Ollie, people by people, and they need to know who you are and the kind of things you believe in and what you're going to be like. I'm always interested in what's someone going to be like as an individual around a very difficult issue, a crisis moment. And how do I think they're going to react under pressure? And are they going to turn up? And do they have enough time? And, is this just something that are they going to learn from this, or what are they going to give? And I think, be careful about saying that, this is something I really want to learn from. Of course you do, but it's the contribution, it's the specific contribution that you can make.
So it sounds like being prepared to talk about difficult moments where you can evidence that you run towards the difficulty versus run away from it is a useful thing to give consideration to.
I think also some of the times where I've failed, and I have, is when I haven't been succinct enough and I haven't kind of just given a punchy answer. I think a number of panels just give me the answer. Let's move to the next one, and I can sometimes sense that I kind of over answer. Be careful with that one.
How do you go about doing that? I mean, one of the things we do in our community actually is we do these peer simulations where you have to pitch responses to your peers, and it's incredible how much people improve through that process. But curious to hear how you've gone about trying to improve yourself.
Rehearse. And also, if you really want something and you kind of just rehearse with someone else, get them to ask you the questions, get that feedback. I found that very helpful. People I trust, I'll go through a rehearsal for an interview. And if they love you enough and they're gentle enough, they'll tell you precisely what you're really doing, rather than, that's great, Tom, fantastic, that's all you need to do. And they'll help you. I
always practice it with my wife and my kids, who are always the best at being honest.
They're my harshest critics. Particularly when I'm posting videos on LinkedIn.
Boring.
Get on with it, Dad.
So you got these first board roles and you started to build that portfolio. How do you go about finding board roles now? Once you've got past that difficult first one, which is the real breakthrough moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does your sourcing strategy look like after that as you try to build up that portfolio?
I think it's a balance of incoming. It's a balance of maintaining your network. How do you do that? You say yes to as many things as you possibly can. I think that one of the other tips I would give people is if you only are talking to the people you know, you're not broadening your network. And when I first decided to move into the plural world, one of the things I thought I could do was meet new people. So everyone that I met, they'd say, how can I help? I say, can you do me a favor and introduce me to 2 people that I don't know, that you think they might get something out of that conversation and I might get something out of that conversation. And bless all my friends and colleagues, they did that for me. And it's amazing how you just expand your network and one thing leads to another. And even if it doesn't lead to anything, you learn something more. I think you've just got to get into town and feel as though that is part of the job. It is part of your role, because what are you doing? You're listening to what's going on in the marketplace. You're listening to how other people are either developing their professional singular careers or their plural careers. You're building different connective tissue than you did when you were a corporate executive. And, there's that moment in your career when you are so busy, you haven't got time to do any of that. So now when this happens and you make that transition, that's when you start to spend more time meeting more people. And that's when you begin to hear opportunities that you might want to invest in or you might want to lean into. And that it is networks. And I think so much of what's happened to me in the last 10 years is about people saying, I've seen that could be really good for you, apply for it. Or an inbound approach, a search firm calling me. But it is about being clear to people also that you are developing a plural career and that you would like people to help you do that. So you've got to be clear about what it is you're doing. And some people very early on in their plural world say, yeah, I might be open to another full-time job. If not, I'll do some plural. And I think that confuses your message. You're either going for it or you're not going for it. So be clear about your message and broaden your network and get to meet new people, not just the people that you know. Get to meet new people and help your network do that for you.
Tom, time is flying, but before we go to the lightning round, we put out to the end of the Boardroom Community that you were coming on the show, and they had a few questions they wanted to put to you directly. And the first one comes from Angela Priest, who asked, what would you do differently in the way that you've gone about building your portfolio if you had your time again?
What would have I done differently? I think I probably, it's a good one, Angela. I think I probably would have spent more time on balance sheets and annual reports and really understanding and getting a much stronger handle on some of the stuff that you need to be more familiar with, and the shape of a business and its finances and its overall construct away from the business itself, but more on the numbers and the formal presentation of the numbers. I probably should have done a bit more work on that in my last 2 or 3 years as a corporate exec.
Next question comes from Dean Grech, who wants to know, how did you approach your first chair role and what were the differences between a startup board and a more established business board?
I mean, I think there's pace. There's clearly pace. There's more governance. I think the ability to summarize on a big table is a real skill. Someone told me that it's about strategy, scrutiny, and support, and I think those three words are very helpful to think about when you're looking at being around a board table and being a chair. It's not about getting everybody to think the same way, but it is about getting all those voices heard and then getting everybody to align behind a particular position. And I think the skill of a big table and a chair of a large organization is that ability to simplify complicated issues. And I think lastly, I'd say breaking bread and bringing people together away from the table. So important as a chair.
Tom, time has flown, which means it's time for the lightning round, which I know you're looking forward to, where I'm going to ask you a short question and ask you for a quick response.
Here we go.
Best book every board member should read and why?
If I was going to pick one, can I pick one that was written by a friend of mine who's been on the podcast, and that's David Dean. And the reason why I picked David's book is that I think David marries the personal with the business. And I admire the man so much. I've learned so much from him. And his book talks about the humility of the way he grew up and applies very good principled approach to doing business with people. He taught me one great thing about business, which is if you've got nothing good to say about someone, don't say it. And I think he's a true pro. And I learned a lot from reading that book that I frankly didn't know about him. So calling the shots, David Dean's book, go for it.
Episode 142, one of my favorites.
It's a great one.
Boardroom behavior that irritates you most?
And when I hear someone say I'm going to be the devil's advocate for a moment, I do not like that. I welcome opinion and I welcome contribution, but I really want to hear it from where people stand rather than where they are standing from, if that makes sense. And I think that a board can benefit from board members who are precisely clear about what they don't like and why they don't like it and why they think it's a bad idea, rather than this kind of abstract, well, let's just think about what other people are thinking. So I am very wary of the devil's advocate.
A question every board should ask at least once a year.
Well, if you're not asking how are our people, what's the culture, where are we going, and I want evidence about how are our people, what's the culture, and where we're going, then there's always a danger that you lose your people and you lose your human capital, and it takes you years to get it back. So every board should be spending time on the organization and the shape of the organization, not just the performance of the business.
Favorite quote?
If you don't measure it, it won't get better.
A piece of board advice that sounds right, but is wrong.
Well, it's never 15 days, it's always 30. So whatever they say to you about how much time you're going to spend at a board and within a business, double it. That would be my advice.
What have you changed your mind on about boards over time, and how has that changed how you behave?
One of the things that you bring to a board is your experience and your knowledge, but it doesn't count for anything if you don't take the table with you. And I think over time, I've realized that being the subject matter expert on something, having the passion to have around a particular issue is nothing if no one is either listening to you or no one is following you. So your job is not to be the smartest person in the room on a particular issue. Your job is to articulate and bring people with you and give enough space to let other people speak rather than you spend all the time occupying that time.
When was the last time you got a significant judgment call wrong in the boardroom, and what did you learn?
I think some of the challenges I've had, some of the biggest challenges I've had have been around founders. And founders who say that they want to become chief execs and delegate. And as much as founders try and do that, many really struggle.
Best interview question to ask a prospective non-executive.
Are you really going to spend the amount of time that you need to do this? So I think it's about time and commitment and evidence of where you've done that and how you've stepped in and lent in on other things.
Finally, one thing our listeners should take away from this episode, if they take nothing else.
I would draw their attention to the 10 videos that I will be launching, and we're up to video 5, I should say, on LinkedIn, which you've been really generous in watching, because that gives you a sense of some of the things that you need to be prepared for if you're going to go for a plural career. But go for it. It's a great phase, and I've loved every minute of it.
Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and experience.
Thanks, Ollie. It's been great.
If you want to walk into a board interview and genuinely demonstrate readiness, not just achievement, the Enter the Boardroom community can help you get there. Listeners get 10% off. Visit etb.uroll.com and use the code ENTER at checkout.